and welcome back to World Osprey Week. Today we're going to learn about osprey reintroductions. We're going to learn about why they are needed and how they work. So let's get started. Firstly, I want to teach you a big word that we are going to use to explain osprey reintroductions, and that is the word translocation. In conservation, this means moving a species from one place and releasing it in a new area. This may be carried out because there is a high number of animals in one area, but there is also a second suitable area with none of those animals. So some of them are taken from the first area and released in the second. Often there is some kind of barrier that stops these animals from doing it themselves. This could be a physical landscape barrier, such as a mountain range or the sea, but there can be other barriers too, such as the behaviour of an animal. For ospreys, their behaviour is the barrier stopping them from spreading. We know that they previously bred all across the UK before being wiped out by people, and managed to build a population back up in Scotland naturally. But we also know that, despite the number of nests growing year on year in Scotland between the 1950s and 1990s, they didn't spread into England very quickly at all, and so were helped to do so by reintroductions. Do you remember the Introduction to Ospreys video from day one? We talked about how ospreys, and particularly male ospreys, like to return to the same area that they were raised when they returned to the UK to breed themselves. This means that there can be a high number of osprey nests relatively close to each other rather than dispersing into new places, because many ospreys will be trying to return to a similar area, and this is what happened in Scotland. Ospreys kept returning to Scotland to breed rather than dispersing into England and Wales. So, to help the population spread from Scotland, the first osprey translocation project in the UK took place in 1996 at Rutland Water. This project was led by a partnership between the Leicestershire and Rutland Wildlife Trust, Anglican Water and bird of prey expert Roy Dennis. There are now around 10 pairs of ospreys nesting near Rutland Water, meaning that the reintroduction was clearly successful. While ospreys have spread from Rutland into Wales, there are still no ospreys breeding in the south of England, and so a further reintroduction project is currently underway in Poole on the south coast. But how exactly do translocations work? So, as we learnt before, translocation involves moving ospreys from one area, in this case being Scotland, to a new one, such as Rutland or Poole. We translocate ospreys when they are still chicks, around the age of 7 weeks old, just before they fly for the first time. But why do we move them at this age? The whole method is based on the simple understanding that ospreys recognise the place that they were raised as home, and often return near that area to breed themselves. Through studying ospreys, we know that this connection is formed after they fledge the nest, when they fly for the first time. After fledging, osprey chicks spend around a month or more exploring the local area and forming an attachment with it. This process is called imprinting and means that they recognise that area as home. So there will be no point translocating older ospreys that already have a connection with another area. We don't want to translocate ospreys too young because they rely heavily on their parents for food, and we want their upbringing to be as natural as possible. So how do we move the chicks? Well, before translocation, it's really important for the Scottish nest to be monitored regularly by professionals with a licence to do so. This is so that we know which nests are suitable for taking chicks from. Most ospreys nest in the top of very tall trees, so to collect the chicks you have to be an experienced tree climber to reach the nest. Ospreys are a protected species, which means only a few people have permission to do this, and for translocations, this is undertaken by the Roy Dennis Wildlife Foundation. The tree climbers collect the birds, and each chick has a colouring put on its leg so that we can recognise them. There is always at least one chick left in each nest, so the parents aren't left without any chicks. Once they have been collected, the chicks are transported down to the new location, like Rutland or Poole, and put into release pens, normally with 2 or 3 chicks in each pen. Within the pens there is a feeding nest as well as a perching bar and post. They can see the surrounding area and are fed 3 times a day on fish and monitored. They stay in the pens for 1 to 2 weeks while they grow and strengthen the wings ready to fly. All of the chicks are fitted with a small radio tag on one of their tail feathers, which allows the team to monitor their location and make sure they are safe once they leave the pens. When they are ready to go, the pens are slowly and quietly opened in the night. By the time the sun rises, the young ospreys can see that they are free to leave and fledge in their own time. They explore the local area, forming that all-important bond with the new location that will attract them back there in years to come. They are still fed multiple times a day on feeding platforms outside of the pens, but they don't actually return into the pens once they have fledged. They are monitored regularly through their radio tags and cameras on the feeding nests, and this continues until they eventually leave on their first migration around 1 month later when the conditions are just right. It's then time to wait and see which birds return a couple of years later and whether they have formed that important bond with their new location. Because of the low survival rate of young ospreys, we don't expect them all to come back, so many birds are released over a number of years. This means there should be enough ospreys that return to start a new breeding population a few years later, and the population should grow from there with more and more birds returning to that area. So that's the idea of osprey reintroductions. Remember to join us tomorrow for the final video all about the reintroduction of other species in the UK. We hope you've enjoyed the video. Make sure to go through the activity pack to learn more about osprey reintroductions, and thanks for watching.